Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down the security rabbit hole to another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. I am Ref. We have above me James, and in the big featured window, hey, look, Julian's back.
Hey.
And if you guys remember episode 688, meaning in the signal, we started talking about a whole bunch of things related to third party testing, pen testing, red teaming, prioritizing. And at one point, Julian said, well, hold on, that's a whole nother can of worms we could have another episode about. And anytime somebody says that, ta-da, here we are. So this episode, we're going to touch on all kinds of third rail problems. We're going to talk about compliance. So we're going to talk about scoping and some other stuff. But let's start there. Julian, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back, I think.
Wow, you think? So we took a break and we stopped at scoping because I saw you kind of cringed there last time. I'm there with you. What's particularly cringeworthy, as the kids say, about scoping for you when it comes to like third party testing?
Well, so I think there are so many challenges with scoping. I think it starts with the fact that it's assumed to be a science, but it's a bit more of an art. There's a question of it's how it's scoped. So a lot of testing is scoped based on asking a whole bunch of technical questions that often the application owners don't know and don't understand the answer to, and B, may not be related to the value the customer is going to get from the pen test, i.e. the risk of their application being compromised or whatever. You have a whole range of different groups of people. Some that say, I don't want you to scope me out. Just give me a pen test. And then you have pen testers who say, well, I need to understand the scope before I go through this. And it's the confrontation almost between the pen test and the target owner about what a scope is. The fact that it's so nebulous and the fact that often procurement people will base value on the day rate rather than the total cost of a pen test.
Yeah, fair enough.
Makes scoping kind of like, well, if we make it more days, but we make the day rate cheaper, then everyone looks like they're getting more value. So there's just so many different dimensions to it. It scares me.
It's even a different priority, right? Too, because I mean, from a customer perspective, like you said, it's about understanding what am I doing the pen test for in the first place? Am I trying to check a box? Am I trying to actually look at the controls that I have in place and where the gaps are? From the vendor side, it's, hey, we've got a limited amount of time. So how do we meet what you're looking for? And oftentimes, I mean, I've seen so many pen tests, right? Like there's very little scoping outside of the scoping is to this application. We're testing this app, external, it's these assets. We do some reconnaissance, we do some different things, but really it's what can you find in here? And it's pretty open to that, which I think for a first-time pen test is okay. I think the scoping changes when you start getting down the line. You're like, hey, look, I've pen tested this app 3 years in a row. Let's change the scoping and say, I'm not focusing on that low hanging. I'm focusing on like, let's dig deep into this thing. We really got to get past that, right? But they need something to go off. And at the same time, you've got an industry that constantly says on LinkedIn and social media that, well, attackers don't have scope, so why should you? Right? There's a lot of competing issues.
It's hard to disagree with, James.
Yeah, I mean, so you've got, first of all, you've got the question of, are we doing this for compliance or not, right? And if you're doing it for compliance and you're not trying to get good security outcomes, well, that's not your priority for doing the pen test, then scoping becomes different. It does become, let's put it into a t-shirt size. Is it small, medium, large, right? And that can simplify things to some extent. But then when you're talking to sophisticated pen testers, they get very, they want to be able to do a good job. They get very nervous about not finding all of the big bugs, right? They know they're never going to find all the bugs, but they want to have enough time to find all the big bugs, right? The really obvious ones. And ultimately, the customers should want that too.
It bugs me that we so I started really disliking scoping a long time ago, Kingdom Far Away, but really got ugly around PCI DSS, right? Because the idea is to clear that hurdle, clear that checkbox as quickly and cheaply as possible. So you try to the whole name of the game was down scope as much as possible, scope as tightly as possible, as few things in scope as possible. But like James, when I said, like, it feels wrong to argue against, like, hey, pen testers, why are we limiting them when attackers don't have that? Well, the obvious answer is money and resources. But I mean, it's still kind of hard to argue with.
Yeah, and it is. And this is why I think one of the really missing aspects of a good scope is, what is the risk to the customer, right? So if I keep coming back to the difference between so a shoe shop, they've got no PII, they've outsourced their credit card taking, it's just an e-commerce site. What's the worst that can go wrong? Someone might be able to buy 10 shoes for the price of one through some kind of rate limiting not working or something like that. What is the worst that can happen? Nothing too bad. What about a healthcare site that's pretty much the same kind of functionality, but it's got PII coming out of its wazoo, right? And so from a purely technical scoping perspective, you might say they're both 5-day jobs. For me, you should say that the PII healthcare site needs at least 1.5, 2x that, because the risk of being hacked there is significantly more. But that's not how we scope today.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the value too. Like, what are you trying to get out of a pen test?
Yeah.
And most places, while they say they're trying to get, I want to know how I can be hacked, that's not what most pen tests are doing. Most are glorified vulnerability assessments, unless you get a really good team that can come in and do that. But I don't see a lot of places where the point of your pen test is, show me every way a hacker can get in. And that's the difference between the statement of, why should we have scope for a pen test? Because a hacker doesn't have scope. Yeah, well, hacker doesn't have ethics. They don't have laws that they have to follow. They don't have anything like that. If you want that type of assessment, then you're talking more of like a red team assessment, something that is more geared towards the adversarial's means of operation, which a pen test typically is not.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And that's, of course, where bug bounty came from in the first place, right? We said, well, hackers don't have time limited scope. So, and there's not limited numbers of them. So give us open scope, open time, all the eyes, and we'll replicate the adversary more accurately in that sense, right? But still, we see people. But bug bounty hasn't taken over the world. Pen testing is still a much larger, a much more used tool in this armory than bug bounty, despite the obvious mathematics of why.
Is it because people are afraid of what's going to come back? I mean, let's just make it, call a spade a spade. Like, is it because companies know they have crap for security, and they know that if they leave it open-ended, you're going to come back to them with a pile of problems? And
yeah, that comes back to a little bit of what we were talking about last time about the prioritization thing, is that people aren't looking for more vulnerabilities. They're looking, and so, I've certainly been in a situation where customers have said, I don't want the best pen test because I don't want all of the vulnerabilities. I just want the low-hanging fruit that I can go and fix and demonstrate I've fixed. And similarly, I've seen customers where we've done really good pen tests for them. We found loads of stuff and they've come back next year and it's all still there again.
Yeah, I think too, the scoping though of bug bounties, as much as we try to say they don't have a scope, go read the scope of a bug bounty program. Well, that's part of the scope, right? Like there's a lot of boundaries on there. No denial of service, no this, we don't count this, we don't, like, there's a lot of scope in there. Right. There is a lot of scope around that, but I would also argue that probably 90+% of findings through bug bounties are no different than a vulnerability assessment. They're cross-site scripting flaws. They're not I've dug this deep in and we actually showed I could exploit this to the nth degree. I mean, read any bug bounty report and they're all like, oh, we found a bunch of IDOR. We found a bunch of cross-site scripting. We found the low-hanging fruit that, quite honestly, a mature security program should be catching before it ever gets to the bug bounty land.
Yeah, and well, you'd expect them to do so as well, because it's much cheaper to capture it with a vulnerability scan than it
right.
Is
well, and that's the point with the pen test versus the bug bounty piece, right? Is that, do I go pay the $20K for a pen test where I get unlimited potential findings, or go grab a pen test that actually has a lot of findings on it, which is a lot of, especially older ones, and then go apply your bug bounty fees to all those findings and tell me how much that pen test would have cost if it was through the bounty program, right? Yeah. And that there's a difference there. And a pen test is not designed to say, okay, I found cross-site scripting. Am I really looking to find it every place? A bug bounty is, right? Like a pen test is saying, hey, you got cross-site scripting, I'm moving on.
And this is why, we talk about it as it should be a program. It's taking each step on top, building on top of the previous step. So do your vulnerability scanning, do your pen test, then put it into bug bounty, right? And that way you should be able to get maximum bang for buck at each stage. I think. But coming back to the whole scoping piece, the thing about a bug bounty is it's not time limited, right? And that's the big thing about a pen test. That's what's different between a pen test and a bug bounty, is that in a pen test you also say no denial of service, no going outside of this main area, whatever, nothing disruptive, etc., etc. But you also say it's only going to take us X amount of time to do it, because we're paying by the hour rather than paying by the bug that's found, and that's the benefit of a bug bounty. But what pen testing does allow you to do is actually specify that you must check every part of the application, right? And you must check every bug class that's in the methodology that you're looking for. And that's how the technical scope comes together. But on the other hand, that doesn't, to James's point earlier, reflect the value necessarily to the customer. We need to get out of days and start to think about defense units or something. I don't know what
I always hated writing on the customer side, writing the scope for any third-party testing, pen test or otherwise. Because it was, and embarrassingly enough, it was at that point my job to understand the system that we were going to be testing. And I can't say with a high degree of confidence that I would put my job on the line for that I really understood the interconnectedness and size and scope of the systems we were testing. Sometimes you found out, like when we did this stuff internally, sometimes, because it was always the same. Developer like, oh, it's this web server and that database server, and that's it. You 3 days in, you're like, what about these other 15 machines that we had? They're like, oh, well, those are out of scope. I'm like, no, that talks to that, talks to that, talks to this, and these things are all related. They're like, oh yeah, we forgot to tell you about that. And I'm not convinced. Like I used to ask for a DFD, a data flow diagram. How does data flow within the application? All right, this is 20 years ago. And hot damn, if any one of those developers that we contracted could actually tell me where things go in because they worked on their own little piece, their own button, their own submit function, whatever, right? And then somebody glued all that together, and like nobody understood how the whole worked. So for me to write scope on a payment card application, on a monitoring application, or any of that stuff, it was sketchy at best, and it was a best guess, and I hated doing it. But like the alternative was to go like point the cannon that way and see what happens, like YOLO, and we couldn't do that because the company that you'd contract through, like, all right, we need to know what we're allowed to touch, what we're not allowed to touch, what the box looks like, and where to aim. And again, just to reemphasize the point, like about more than half the time, I had very low confidence that I knew what the heck I was asking somebody to test.
Yeah. And
right, exactly.
Ironically enough, that speaks highly to what's the value of that test, because in your case, Raph, that may not have been the actual output of the test, but the fact that you realize we don't have the internal insights that we need, this is what we need to solve.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you start to look at the requirements for change testing, it gets even more of a challenge, because if I've only made a change to this part of the app, does that mean I only need to test this part of the app?
I hate that. Right, James? I think we've done show after back in the back catalog. We probably did 5 or so or 10 of these topics, because completely we would the way we did it at when I was a part of GE way back in the day. We would have, everybody it was always lowest bidder, right, to do the work, which means that like to move a button from this side to here, to add a module, to add a new data source or whatever, somebody else had never seen it was going to get this giant ball of code and say, okay, I need you to add this in here. And so they would just write that in and drop it in, and off you go. They had no idea what was going on over here. And so like, yes, nobody had data flow diagrams. No, like this was we just need you to test this new button that we added. And I would say, yeah, but that interacts with the entirety of the application. And they'd come back and go, yeah, I know, but this is the part we added. Like, we're not talking right to each other. That was frustrating. And I suspect that hasn't changed much.
No.
That's depressing. All right.
But it's the same problem with functional testing as it is with non-functional testing in that sense as well, right? And the way they get through that is with vast automated test suites. So that then brings us back to automated security testing. This is where why we have SAST and DAST in the delivery part in the AppSec pipeline, right? And but what about when it goes into production? What is continuous? And it brings us back full circle to the last time we spoke. What does continuous pen testing mean, and how do we enact it to solve these challenges?
And how do we get it past not just doing the same old where continuous pen testing just turns into automated scanning, right? Like, okay, well, new pieces out there, we'll do the same test we've been doing, because at some point you have to make it efficient enough that it is not a manual assessment for every change that's going into production. So how are you accommodating that?
But James, that makes sense, because as a vendor, you make a profit when you can automate and make things more efficient. So you're going towards efficiency, and the customer wants a deeper, more meaningful outcome. And there's a point which those things diverge, and they diverge further and faster in software development. I do believe that.
Yeah, and I think the reality is there are some things that automation is really good at catching, and some things that it just can't touch. And even the best autonomous AI tools are not catching today and need humans. So the question is, can you...
42 seconds, Julian, before somebody said AI. Sorry, 19 minutes and 42 seconds before you said AI. Good job, dude. We went this far. Continue.
All right, I'll try harder next time. But autonomous, automated and autonomous systems are good at certain bug classes, right? It's not hard to throw a cross-site scripting test at every form field on a website. It is hard to look for idles or business logic flaws or other identity flaws, and so I think the solution that we should be aiming for is how we combine the autonomy with the humans in a way that gets both the efficiency that, well, it's not just the vendors looking for efficiency for profit, it's the customers looking for efficiency to reduce costs, right? They want to pay less and get more. So we need to find more efficient ways of delivering that and making sure that we're not trying to solve all the problems with the automation, but we're also not wasting human time on the stuff that automation can do well.
I feel like that lands the plane squarely on the AI block. So now we have to talk about it. We were talking about ending the show on this anyway, but this is interesting, right? Because I had a recent really interesting conversation with a friend about how because we're giving AI agents or just AI, let's just use broadly used words AI, to do these automated, these lower level tasks, and increasingly we're trying to make computers do higher order. And we keep saying that it's thinking or it's creating, when in reality, and this becomes a philosophical argument, like we're just recombining stuff that's already out there. I have seen this before. I've been in the industry long enough to where I've seen this before. In the late 90s, early 2000s, we started outsourcing everything, offshored everything to India and China and cheap labor markets, all the L1, L2 stuff, like the lower level stuff. And then 5, 6, 7 years on, we're trying to hire mid-level and high-level talent. We're going, why is there nobody here to hire? And to all those people, I said the exact same thing. They're offshore, right? They're never going to be, you didn't make the farm team. You took the farm team and made it a different team whose job it was not to think, but to read scripts that you created for them. Ergo, they're not really learning on their own. They're just reading off of a page. And now you're saying, well, where are the people that have learned by doing, trying, tinkering, and thinking, and they don't exist? I get it. We're purposing AI into finding security flaws all over the place. And I've seen organizations with a tremendous amount of success in that. At what point does that taper off, and why is that already happening?
So I think it's a very real concern, and it's not just in our industry, like you say, across all sorts of industries, right? There's no question in my mind that AI can't do all of the jobs that humans can do today in terms of vulnerability discovery, right? Bug hunting, pen testing, whatever. The purely autonomous solutions are just not there. But they are getting better all the time, and they are able to find a lot of those low-level bugs, as you say. So if they can do that at half the cost of or a significant fraction of the cost of a human, our humans are still going to be really useful at that top end. But are they, and we've got lots of those really clever humans today. But like you say, what happens in the future when those...
Yeah, because they'll age out. We'll age out. Like, we don't want to retire at some point.
Yeah. Well, they've moved to only finding $10,000 bugs, and they, get 10 a month and decide to retire at the age of 40, right? So they're going to go even quicker at that point. And so... Yeah. So how do we bring up a new generation of bug hunters that's going to be finding the sophisticated bugs? I think it's a real question for our industry. I I think there are opportunities, because there are opportunities to think about how, what else does vulnerability research mean? It doesn't just mean vulnerability discovery. It can be more kind of, theoretical thinking about bug classes and things like that, right? And I think that's the opportunity that we might have that maybe lawyers, I don't know anything about law, don't have in that.
James, this one's, I know you've probably been thinking about this, but I want to pose this to you. If we've got AI testing or AI mechanisms that'll find stuff we know about today, are we missing something is the AI that's being deployed right now going to identify stuff that we don't know exists yet? Because there's not creativity in that system.
I mean, it's interesting to see some of the systems coming out, because when you start thinking about multi-agent systems where you've got an agent that's basically building the war games, and it's like, here, you're going to build something, you're going to take everything and throw it at it and start understanding what breaks, what doesn't. Are there ways that AI could, if it's talking to itself and just keep going back and forth, could it start uncovering things that us as a human have not reached yet, just because we haven't seen that many scenarios to be able to say, wait a minute, this could be an anomaly? There might be ability for that to do it. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see. The thing that I don't know how much we're giving much attention to when we start talking about testing is the amount of and the accuracy of prompt engineering that has to go in place to build, to teach these AI systems, this is what you're looking for. I was just looking at a GitHub repo over the weekend, actually, and I was looking through, they have skills that are built out for doing code review. They have, these different pieces to do threat modeling versus code review versus this. And if you pull out the files that lay out, hey, this is what good looks like, this is what bad looks like, this is how I want you to go through and look at this and compare it to the OWASP top 10 and compare it to this, and the amount of work that has to go into getting it to get close to accurately identifying what we want to identify in its job.
Yeah.
Are we reviewing that? And how well do we understand that we're saying, hey, here's the guidelines I'm putting in place, we're trusting these are good, because that's the baseline for when this thing starts spitting out information. Did I describe properly what was good versus what is bad? Because just like all of our other automated systems, right? I mean, it's going based on what we told it, not what really it knows itself. It's just faster at pulling this information together and writing something out for us to see it. But to the point of where are the low levels? How do we get to the mid levels? I think there's still a lot to be learned there about, if we take away the easy, I don't need this, then how do we get people to that next level? And I saw somebody on LinkedIn try to do some comparison between when the calculator first came out, oh, people don't want the calculator because it's going to make us not be able to do basic math. We should still be able to do basic math. The calculator helped me with the quadratic formula and the really hard stuff that we don't want to spend our time with. But I don't know, you could say the same thing with the cash register, that how many people sitting at the register, if you gave them cash today, if that computer was down, could tell you the change you get back? Not a lot.
Yes.
I think, but it's interesting, right? Because if you think about maybe the job of an actuary, right? An actuary before calculators had to do incredibly complex maths to get to the answer. And now the calculator does the maths for them. There's still jobs for actuaries, but their job has changed.
Yeah.
So is that what we're going to see, right? I still come back to the point that it's not just ingenuity that humans are better at. It's also risk management. And a lot of my thinking around autonomous systems is having the human in the loop to make sure the autonomous system doesn't do something stupid, not to make sure it does something clever, although that's also one of the use cases, to make sure it doesn't do something stupid. And for that, I think, you're going to continue to have people trained in risk assessment, right? That can guide these AIs. As I said last time, the human augmented AI rather than the AI augmented human.
Do you see? We'll call this a parting remark here. Do you see us on target for a near-term utilization of automation, just boring old automation, AI, right? The agent-based kind of very specific stuff James was talking about, and some sort of realistic targeting and testing regimen that makes that raises the security bar rather than simply like just checks a box. Because I feel like more often than not, third-party testing is done to check a box. It's done to please somebody else, not to benefit us. And at the way it's being, the rate it's being executed, and with the scope and challenges that are put before it, it's really easy to tell who the benefactor is, right? It's clearly to tell, make sure somebody else feels more comfortable. Do you see a future coming in near future, maybe even not too distant, where this changes, where it actually starts to benefit the organization rather than just being a checkbox?
I hope so. Right, that is, coming back to what we talked about last time, actually a bit, I think it was off camera, is I got so frustrated with all of the problems we talked around compliance and scoping in the offensive security market. This is the moment that I really feel we've got an opportunity to raise the bar. It's not going to be raised. We're not going to raise the bar just by deploying more and more faster, cheaper, autonomous, right? The problem, a lot of the problem also has to come from the market as well. One of the challenges with pen testing is the compliance thing, because it's become unstrategic, if you like. The CISO doesn't get that involved. It goes to a pen test manager and a procurement manager to procure, and it comes down to that. What's the day rate? How much can I get for a fixed budget, right? And we need to demonstrate that we can improve those security outcomes with continuous, human in the loop agentic testing, so that people start taking it a bit more serious, so people can start thinking about it more strategically and stop thinking about it as a check. There's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. Until we can demonstrate it, no one's going to demand it, and until they demand it, the market is going to give it. Right?
I think the bar raising too comes a lot to how it's integrated outside of security, or what we would typically call security. So great, we can identify things faster, but the ability to have co-pilots in our development streams that we can send an agent and say, hey, look, we just found cross-site scripting here, write the code to fix that. Our ability to build those systems out that we can react to issues faster and they can self-heal, I think that raises the bar in our ability. Because right now, a lot of times, like, okay, we found something, send it to the dev team, they'll put it in a backlog. We have to wait on the human to respond. If you could sit there and have that automatically go through, even if there's a human in the loop to say, hey, a new PR is out there because we had this issue, the agent already resolved it, it's already run through its tests, we want to make sure we're good to check it in. And somebody can look at it and say, yeah, look, everything looks good here. It's not deleting our database. It's not doing this. But we could speed the recovery process a lot faster there. So I think that's one area where we can see it, but it's not security driving that. That's how do we get development upgraded to be able to take advantage of those situations. I think on our side that we directly can control, it's how much faster can we get the analysis that we need to identify those gaps, to be able to say, this is where we should focus our time. It's on this stuff here because this is where it is. Across my 8 different systems, we know SOAR didn't help us super well there, right? Like, I can use this to analyze stuff and get results much faster than me going and digging through 8 different things and doing research and pulling this stuff out. Let me get that quick hit. Now I'll take that analysis to the next step and be able to say, okay, these are our key areas. This is our risk vector. This is our top concern that we need to address. I think that is where it helps an organization be able to quickly identify things to help raise that bar. We're not waiting so long on the results.
That is, I think that's an interesting thing to think about, is not only are you finding, I think that would be a, God, I hate this term. That would be a game changer potentially, right? Because you get, I found it, I proposed the solution and I tested that solution. I know it works. Can I drop this into your code? Man, that's a lot further than my brain is thinking at the moment, which is kind of cool.
Let's be fair, that's not a security solution.
Right.
That's a development solution.
Yeah,
right.
True.
I mean, that is, how do we update our organization and how we work? That's not a security bolt-on. If we can get that stuff flowing, and I know companies are looking at that, right? I mean, I've seen places where they're looking at, how do we get agents to come back and help us with technical debt? And, boom, point it at the code base. It'll clean all that stuff up. It's a little far-fetched, I think, from a project perspective. But I think if organizations can start building in that ability to do small little, oh, I found this. We already said, you look at SaaS, we get the result. We can alert you right in the PR and say, hey, you've got cross-site scripting right here. And we even, like, some of these things give really good recommendations. This is the code that should fix it. It's the next phase of that to be able to say, oh, I knew which code could fix it. I've already implemented it for you. I ran the tests already. Everything's vetted. All you got to do is verify, like, yep, we're good to push this. Like, I think that's the next evolution that we see there in those. And again, I mean, AI versus you could have wrote that 10 years ago through scripts of how we detect SaaS to be able to put it in. AI is just going to be faster with it. So I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
It's an interesting place to end, but that we have to do. All right. So optimism, I like it. I think this is the first time in a while we've ended on optimism. So it's early January. We're really not late. It's early in the year. Optimism is a good place to start because we're still in month 1. All right. Great. Julian, thanks for being back, man.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Have a good time.
Thanks, folks. Thanks for listening. This has been another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. 688 is the one that you want to listen to before you listen to this one. If you've already listened to this one, go back and listen to 688. It's a lot of good content, a lot of really quotable content that Julian dropped in there for us. And until the next one, we'll catch you guys another time, another place on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Cue the music. Adios. Bye-bye.